let's move on to the next thing. So that's the items part, working with items and working with the serialization of items in Sitecore and the modules. So in this case, it'll be unicorn. This is not very different in TDS or the way you do it, the way we do it, but conceptually it's the same. You will create a TDS project next to it. The important part of items is to distinguish which items do you actually work with in your solution, and what items are a part of a module, and what items is not. So we need to define sort of different types of items. And so we split down the middle in between definition items, the stuff that you manage, and content items, the stuff that customers manage or editors manage. So definition items will define content structure, configuration, or metadata in the solution. It's created in the development environment and managed there, and then it's pushed to production. It's very, very important that there are items that goes from development to production, and there are items that goes from production and back into development for testing reasons. But if you want to have a good maintainable solution, then you need to distinguish between those two things. If you don't clearly define whether a template, for example, what direction that item goes, then you're in a world of pain later. Because then suddenly someone changes things in production, you override it with a change from development and so on. So it's super, super important when working with items. It's clean split between definition items and content items. Yep, as I said, moved as a part of versioned deployment from development to test to production. So versioned is important here, because what we want to achieve for maintainability reason is to version our items, our definition items, together with our code. Because there's a dependency between our code and our items. If we add a field and reference that in our code, that change to the items and that code belongs together in a module, first of all, but it also belongs together in a version control. So if you deploy one without the other, you're again in a world of pain. Or if you deploy the code and do the change in production, you should be fired. So it's seen very often, people fixing things in Sitecore, templates and things like that. That is not the way to work. So versioning items as part of code, really important. So examples of these are rendering layout items, the templates and fields, placeholders, custom field types, lookup items for settings, and pretty much all the items in the core database. So all the things that are sort of linked together, settings, configuration, those kind of things. But you will probably have to work out in your specific solution which items belongs to which group. There are some things that you can probably call a very common practice, like templates. Don't do template changes in production, or core database changes. So content items is the content or data shaping the specific user experience. And that's a very sort of ambiguous one, but it's managed by editors in production. It can be required, this is important, so the structure of a solution can be required in a certain way by business logic. So the fact that you have a /Sitecore /content /home /global, it might be sort of a statically defined a convention that you have, that you say that's where you put your stuff. So the global item in Sitecore, or even the home item, is that a definition item? It's probably not. It's probably a content item, but it's required by business logic. And what happens in version 2 when you create a new /global /teasers? Is that a definition item? No, it's probably not. So it's so what you might want to do is set up sort of a deploy once strategy as well. So where you create items and then you deploy it once to production. TDS has a very good option for that. Unicorn is not quite the same. So, what's that?
I think Unicorn has a deploy first time, and then it won't overwrite it again.
So Unicorn has a deploy once, I'm hearing. Brilliant. All good. Again, we're in a lucky place because we have all our content in version control. So I don't have to worry about that. So all our content. So again, sometimes you want a strategy for moving that stuff back as well, especially when you're looking at DevOps, and that's where Ruud, if you want to get a complete DevOps environment where you can test stuff, then taking backups of production data and spinning up in test environments, the automation of that is super powerful. So if you have a new release and you want to run automated tests in your test environment, having a backup repository in the current production data, spinning that up in test, applying your new patch on top, running your automated tests is awesome. Once you see that in working, it's marvelous. So that's just one of the sort of the things in DevOps that you want to consider is backups and restores from production back into test. Also, I've always thought that when you're developing, what you want is a copy of the customer side as much as it looks as much as possible. There are others that sort of have very simple data sets in development. Sometimes developers can be a little, boxed in and not think about the implications. Like what happens if you have 100,000 news items instead of 10? So test 1, test 2, test 3. We all know the lorem ipsum that front-end developers does, right? It looks great when it says lorem ipsum, and then the customer puts in a really long title, and everything goes, right? So it's those kind of scenarios. Try some real data, put some real data in there. So examples of that is all the stuff under /Sitecore content. So I think that's sort of self-explanatory. So items in Sitecore are part of modules just as logic and views. So important. Many entities in Sitecore consist of multiple objects, and this is the type-centric nature of Sitecore. So when you have a rendering and you have a rendering definition item in Sitecore, those two things together is the rendering in Sitecore, not just one or the other. And that's why we need this kind of serialization and setup. In the future, who knows, this might go away, just have one or the other. But yeah, so we need the conventions in place to control these things together. And items are associated with modules through structure. This is the modularization, the structure of that. So in templates, we have the convention of a layer folder and then a module folder. And then all the templates for that is in that folder. So pretty simple and easy. Always manage and version items as part of the module. I think we've been through that a couple of times. Use serialization, version it. And keep the serialization in the folder of the project. If you don't do that, then you might end up with that kind of situation where one of the things that's really clever is that you can take one folder and you can sort of move it across, or you can delete it, and everything is kept together physically on disk. So if you, for example, have one TDS project where you manage all your TDS items, that can be in one location, and then you suddenly have to link these things together, the files. So, and then only manage solution-specific items. Don't start serializing standard Sitecore items. Everybody's nodding. They've been there, yeah. Well, it's just, this is not, well, maintainability is one thing. Another part of this is upgradability. If you do this right, if you follow these conventions, then upgrading is just going to be so easy for you. your code, because everything is it's just that lean pieces that changes Sitecore. There's no Sitecore in there. Sitecore is sort of taken out of the equation. It's the thing that